Department officials are sounding the alarm about the department's prosecution of James Comey, calling it retaliatory and vindictive. In a new legal brief just filed, former officials from both Democratic and Republican administrations called the case against the former FBI director an unprecedented and dangerous exercise of prosecutorial power. Last month, Comey was charged with 2 felony counts of lying to Congress and obstructing a congressional proceeding. He has pleaded not guilty to both. And joining us now is MSNBC Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delanian and Hofstra University professor of law James Sample. So, Ken, what more are we hearing from these former DOJ officials, again, from both Democratic and Republican administrations?
That's right, Alan. Some big names on here, including Eric Holder, the former Attorney General under the Obama administration. Notably, though, not Bill Barr, who was Attorney General in the Trump administration. What they're saying here is that this is an unprecedented assault on the rule of law. They're saying that using the government's law enforcement powers, to quote from the letter, to punish political enemies is anathema in a democracy, is a hallmark of autocracy, and is exactly what is happening here. And they're saying that based on their experience, this would be an impeachable offense in any administration in history. And of course, they cite the president's long animosity towards James Comey. They cite the Truth Social message where he essentially ordered the Attorney General to charge Mr. Comey. And they cite the fact that this indictment appears to be based on very little in terms of substance behind the charges. Again, this is a friend of the court brief. They're trying to convince the judge to dismiss the indictment. It probably will not have that effect, but it represents a powerful statement by former Justice Department officials on it.
I mean, James, we've heard these types of arguments for weeks now, really, since this indictment came down, even before that, when it was reported that we could see an indictment. Does it change anything what these DOJ officials, former officials, are saying? How much weight could it carry in a courtroom?
I think, as Ken noted, it doesn't necessarily, it's certainly not a slam dunk. I don't know that it changes the calculus to make it more probable than not that a vindictive or selective prosecution motion will succeed. But the atmospherics here do matter, and the individuals who are part of this brief matter. I've filed a lot of amicus briefs, and every time you file an amicus brief, there's sort of a lingering question. There's a lingering question sometimes whether it'll even be read at all, much less whether it'll have any impact. This brief will be read. This brief will have some impact atmospherically, particularly because of who signed on to the brief and their personal experience being brought to bear with respect to matters of prosecutorial discretion. And they call on the late Justice Robert Jackson, who is, a bipartisan icon in judicial circles, particularly with respect to prosecutorial decisions and the power that is wielded by prosecutors. And Justice Jackson, and they point this out, said over and over again that power needs to be checked by norms. And what has happened here with James Comey, what's happened with Letitia James, has obliterated, not just sort of transgressed norms, has obliterated them.
Another development with some new reporting that was first to MSNBC. Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee have now sent a letter, and they're warning top DOJ officials about President Trump's reported request of some $230 million in restitution. And here's what they write in this new letter. Quote, "You should be aware of the potential personal consequences you face if you violate that oath and proceed with approving these claims. You could face civil liability, ethics investigations, professional discipline, and potential criminal liability for conspiracy to defraud the United States." That's like a huge warning to top officials within the Trump administration. Does any of those potential consequences seem likely to you?
I don't know if those consequences seem likely, but let's not lose sight of two things here. There's a legal context and there's a political context. Your prior segment was just about the possibility of people on SNAP benefits not potentially having enough money to eat because their benefits don't get funded. At the same time that the President of the United States is suing the American taxpayer for $230 million because he was subject to investigations that were signed off on by federal judges for probable cause of criminal culpability, investigations that in fact yielded significant evidence that would have indicated the very possibility of a conviction. Look, if there were no classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, there's no classified document case. If the classified documents that were in Mar-a-Lago had been returned to Washington when they were asked, there's no obstruction case. If there weren't the events of January 6th and the efforts to undermine the 2020 election, if those events didn't take place, there's no January 6th investigation. If you think about this, go to the merits of the claim lacks merit, first of all. The president's reputation was so damaged that he became the president of the United States again That's number one. Number two, subordinates making this decision, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche making the decision as to whether or not their supervisor, to whom they owe their careers at this point, should get $230 million. That's crazy. This is as far removed from the norms and law of the United States as one could possibly imagine.
James Sample, thank you. Ken Delaney, as always, I appreciate your reporting, my friend. Up next here on Cabrera Reports, Texas becomes the latest battleground in the national